have a total of 4 biology teachers. And the school board, as they looked over their yearly budget, told the teachers that perhaps this year they might have enough money to let them buy new textbooks for the biology classes. So the teachers sat down and they reviewed all the textbooks that were out there. And the book that they picked is the one that I co-authored with Joe Levine, called Biology by Miller and Levine, published by Prentice Hall. And they thought that it fit the Pennsylvania State Science Standards. They thought their kids would enjoy using it. They thought the writing was clear. I could go on, but then I'm going to sound like I'm doing a commercial.
That's all right.
And they then brought that book to the board and said, this is the book we'd like. Well, at the last school board election prior to this in Dover, a number of people had run for the town school board in an election which there was a very small turnout. And to make a long story short, the people whom you might identify as part of the religious right had gained a 6-3 majority on the board. One of the members is a fellow named William Buckingham, and Buckingham went through the book and at a public school board meeting told the teachers that he didn't want to approve this book because he was looking for a book that taught both evolution and creationism. And a lot of people in town were just horrified to hear this. During the public comment period, people stood up and said, you can't teach creationism in school. It would be unconstitutional. There's a lot of court decisions this way. And Buckingham, with some other allies on the board, literally shouted these people down. At one point, he told one of the members of the public who objected the following, and he said, 2,000 years ago, somebody died on a cross for you. Don't you think it's time we showed him a little respect? And respect, in this case, means teaching creationism in science class. Well, what happened was the board then, and we know this now, was in contact behind the scenes with members of the Discovery Institute, which is a Seattle, Washington-based think tank that promotes intelligent design. And essentially they got the word that you're not supposed to say creationism in public. And after a couple more meetings, it was all about let's teach intelligent design and so forth. They then purchased 2 classroom sets of a book called Pandas and People, which is an intelligent design textbook, put this in the school library, and they asked the teachers, the 4 teachers, to prepare an intelligent design curriculum. Well, the teachers refused, and they did this, and this took a lot of courage. They refused at the risk of losing their jobs. The board then decided that they would write an intelligent design lesson on their own. So they wrote a 4-paragraph intelligent design lesson. They asked the teachers, would you at least read this to your students? And once again, the 4 teachers refused. So the board was reduced to instructing the superintendent and the assistant superintendent to go into the biology classrooms while the teachers literally stood outside in the hallway and read this statement to students. Now, the parents, of course, were watching all this happen. And the morning after this statement was read, 11 parents went to federal court in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, very close to Dover, actually, and filed a lawsuit against the Dover Board of Education, alleging that their First Amendment rights as Americans had been infringed because intelligent design was a form of creationism, and therefore this amounted to a government agency, the school board, establishing the religion. So at that point, Kitzmiller versus Dover was filed and was ready to go. This was in December of 2004, and the case moved very quickly towards trial. Any questions so far?
No, this is a fantastic explanation, one of the best I've seen.
So now what happens is rather interesting, and that is an organization called the Thomas More Legal Foundation comes in and tells the school board they will represent them for free. There'll be no legal costs. We'll bring our top-notch lawyers in here and we'll represent you. And the Thomas More Legal Foundation on the web describes itself as the sword and shield for the people of Christ. And they have made their reputation by going around and representing sort of the church side of church-state issues on religious freedom, creche, Christmas displays, and public property and that sort of stuff. So the school board thought that this was going to be great. We don't have to pay anything, and let's go ahead and fight this. What happened is the parents, of course, appealed to the American Civil Liberties Union. They said, well, we'll help you out, but we're going to be outgunned by Thomas More because all we can give you is our one First Amendment specialist for Pennsylvania, a wonderful guy, by the way, by the name of Vic Walczak. But within about a week, they were joined by 2 lawyers from a private law firm who convinced their law firm to let them take this case pro bono. And, of course, in legal parlance, that means they worked for free. So there was a sort of a team assembled of one lawyer from the ACLU and a number of private attorneys who were so strongly motivated by this they wanted to take this on for free. I and a number of other scientists volunteered to be expert witnesses in the case, and the case moved towards trial. Now, the funny thing about all of this is that the Discovery Institute offered up a number of its senior fellows, people like Stephen Meyer, who's the head of their Institute for Science and Culture, William Dembski, who had actually bragged about how great it would be to get Darwinists in the courtroom where we could dissect their false ideas and so forth. So 8 of these people, as it turned out, signed up to be expert witnesses. But as the case moved towards trial, I think the Discovery Institute realized that for them, this was going to be a train wreck. And it was going to be a train wreck because the hidden links between old-fashioned creationism and this relabeled version called intelligent design might be exposed, and they didn't want any part of that. So one after another, when the time came for the expert witnesses from the Discovery Institute to be deposed, they withdrew from the trial until only 3 of them were left to actually show up in court. And I give those 3 guys credit. Those were Michael Behe, Scott Minish from the University of Idaho, and Steve Fuller, who is a philosopher, sociologist from Great Britain. So those guys actually had the guts to show up. The trial started in September, end of September in 2005, and I had the honor, although I'm not sure that's the right word, of being the lead witness for the plaintiffs. And I spent the first 2 days of the trial on the stand giving testimony and then being cross-examined by attorneys for the other side. How'd the trial turn out? Well, the trial lasted for 6 weeks, so it's hard to give a quick summary. But the long and the short of it is that the trial was an absolute scientific rout for evolution. The evidence that people like myself and Kevin Padian, a paleontologist from Cal Berkeley, put up there in front of the court was simply unchallenged. Barbara Forrest from Southeastern Louisiana University was able to show in a devastating way how creationism had simply relabeled itself in an effort to sort of slide in under the legal radar by calling itself intelligent design. Barbara was even able to take this book, Pandas and People, and show the court that the book had first been written as a creation science textbook, talking about the creator did this and the creator did that, and this is the result of creation. And at one point, they simply, sort of fired up Microsoft Word, and they did a global find and replace, and they simply replaced every occurrence of the word creator with the word designer. So in that stroke, by calling the creator a designer, they pretended that they had put up something new, in other words, something non-religious, in the guise of intelligent design. Well, the judge saw through it. The trial, as I say, was a scientific rout. Michael Behe, one of the leading sort of scientific proponents of intelligent design, on the stand was subject to just a devastating cross-examination in which he was forced to admit that there really had never been any scientific evidence that he or anyone else had ever been able to discover in favor of intelligent design. And Behe even admitted under oath in court that in order for intelligent design to qualify as science, science itself had to be redefined. And the attorney asked him, your definition of science seems so loose that under it even astrology might count as science. What do you think about that? And Behe said, believe it or not, yes, I agree. Under my definition, astrology counts as science. And when he said that, the whole courtroom laughed. Well, the judge wasn't laughing, and at the end of the trial, he simply called it like he saw it, saying intelligent design simply cannot decouple itself from its creationist roots. The people who advance this idea have a clear religious agenda. This is impermissible in the public schools. And there's one last thing that's particularly worth noting. When the decision came down, any number of people, commentators and so forth, said, well, that's what's wrong with this country. Too many of those darn liberal activist judges. Well, the funny thing about this is the judge who heard the case, whose name is John E.